This video will contain spoilers for Jujutsu Kaisen chapters 126, 127, and 128, and Season 2, Episode 20, otherwise known as Episode 44. So, the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen is really trying to figure out that moral quandary. And in this series, I'm going to be analyzing the story of the series as it airs and, as a manga reader, comparing the anime to the manga to see what they pulled over directly, what they modified or expanded, and what they just straight up removed. So let's begin with the 20th episode of Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen. First, I'll recap the plot and explain what chapters it covered. The episode begins with a flashback. Nobara, Yuji, and Megumi are talking around a table with Gojo's freshly dry-cleaned $1,600 shirt on it, when Nobara accidentally spills coffee on it. Shenanigans ensue, and then we cut back to Nobara's decimated face just to gut punch us. As Yuji finally reaches his true limit and begins to break down under the weight of all that had happened, Mahito takes advantage of the situation to press the attack and manages to land a black flash on Yuji. He proceeds to give Yuji a heavy beating while ranting at him about the true nature of the fight they're having. He finally explains what he meant when he said Yuji was him, pointing out that he kills people as second nature, just as Yuji saves people as second nature. Effectively, he's positioning himself as the Joker to Yuji's Batman, embodying his opposite, existing as his inversion. As he winds up to finish Yuji off, suddenly a clap rings out, and Mahito's in a completely different spot. Who else but the one man Yuji could use most at this moment has made his arrival? The one and only Todo Aoi. We cut away to Arata and Todo arriving at B5F, remarking on the fact that Gojo is already gone with Getoned, and their mission has now shifted from rescue to contain and protect. This scene was inserted here. In the manga, it doesn't happen for a couple more chapters. Mahito recognizes him, by the scar on his face and Boogie Woogie, as the sorcerer who beat up Hanami with Yuji, which makes a nice inversion of how sorcerers were recognizing Mahito based on his patch face they heard about from Yuji and Nanami. Suddenly, a sharply dressed young man comes running from the hallway addressing Todo. This is Nita's younger brother, Arata, a first year at Kyoto Jujutsu High. He mentions that he finished treating Nobara, but doesn't have high hopes for her survival. Todo directs him to treat Yuji as well, and shouts encouragement at Yuji. Yuji explains why he's in the state he is, and whilst he does so, Mahito tries to take advantage of the opportunity to attack. Todo makes judicious use of his technique to protect the other two and repel Mahito. Mahito remarks that even when you know how it works and try to prepare for it, it's still so disorienting. Todo gives Yuji a speech about how as long as they continue to survive and fight, their friends will not truly be dead. More importantly, their friends entrusted them with responsibilities that are now theirs to carry on in their absence, and such is the curse of a Jujutsu sorcerer. In regards to Todo mentioning not to tell Yuji about that, he's talking about the fact that Gojo is already gone, and rescuing him is already off the table. Arata uses his technique on Yuji, and explains that basically it just stops the pain from any current wounds and keeps them from getting worse. It doesn't heal them per se, and won't help against any future damage dealt, but puts him back in fighting condition for now. He also tells Yuji he used the same on Nobara, but that while she has a more than 0% chance of survival, she's not looking good. He says he'll take her and retreat. Meanwhile, Todo and Mahito are engaged in a scuffle. Todo is doing a good job of utilizing his technique to keep Mahito's hands away from himself, but Mahito is becoming more competent by the second. He feels as though he's right on the verge of grasping the true shape of his soul and wants to land another black flash. Suddenly, Mahito is surprised when Todo switches with Yuji, who's prepping a punch in the classic Hunter x Hunter Gon Jajunken stance. He apologizes to Nanami for almost using his sins to take the easy way out and run away, rather than working to atone and prove he still deserves to exist by countering the bads he sees himself as having caused with good actions. He throws rock and lands a black flash on Mahito, while committing himself to taking on Nanami's share of suffering, now that he's not around to do it anymore. Mahito regains his footing, remarking on Yuji's reversal of fortune. Todo welcomes him back to the fray, and they prepare to begin the battle proper. At this point, we cut away to Miwa, and see what the final of the 3 Minimaru was meant to do. Mechamaru tells Miwa that he made sure to arrange things so that everyone at Kyoto, save for Todo and Arata, would be away on the 31st, as none of the rest of them, not even Utahime, would have been able to survive in Shibuya. He tells Miwa that a lot of this is his fault and apologizes for not having been better. Before he finally fades away for good, he asks Miwa to find her happiness, and tells her that as long as she finds a way to be happy, his wish will have come true. With those final words, Mechamaru is finally truly dead. As Miwa bawls her eyes out, the rest of the Kyoto team confers on the topic and doesn't necessarily agree with Mechamaru's assessment, even though he must be right considering even Gojo lost. We cut back to Todo and Yuji v Mahito. Mahito assesses Todo's soul as being at full health, while his estimate for Yuji is 10%, and for himself is 40%, after the death of his clone, the Black Flash from Yuji, and Nobata's resonance. He plans to deal with Todo's technique first, but his trap transfigured human fails when Todo manages to swap with it, surprising Mahito that he can detect the cursed energy of transfigured humans before they transform. Todo thinks to himself and realizes he's the one being left behind, now that both Yuji and Mahito are throwing out black flashes. He refuses to let Yuji feel alone, reflecting the divide that grew between Gojo and Geto when Gojo grew too much stronger than him too quickly. He manages to land a black flash on Mahito, but it has no effect as Todo has no way to target Mahito's soul. Nevertheless, all 3 combatants had now realized 120% of their potential. Mahito pulls out another trap card and vomits up a bunch of transfigured humans from his stash, mashing them together with soul multiplicity to blast a huge-scale body repel at Todo and Yuji. The attack breaks through the roof of the underground, carrying the fighters upwards to street level. Todo notes that Mahito is countering his switch by attacking from all sides at once, and wonders just how close to the end of his rope Mahito actually is. He tells Yuji it's time to kick things up a notch. Mahito tells them it's their last chance to curse each other, and the episode ends. With the recap out of the way, let's go over the basic points of the plot. 1. With Nobata down for the count, Yuji is on his last legs, until Todo shows up with Arata. 2. Arata stabilizes Nobata and Yuji with his technique, then takes Nobata and retreats, while Todo uses his signature charisma to get Yuji's head back in the game. 3. Miwa has her final conversation with Mechamaru. He finally fades away for real, and we find out the rest of the Kyoto team is approaching Shibuya. 4. The true final battle of Todo and Yuji versus Mahito begins as Mahito's wide-scale attacks carry their fight out onto the street. Now let's get into some analysis. For this episode, I actually just want to throw in a refresher on the Kyoto students. They're not super important, but remembering who they are and their techniques will be helpful in the upcoming episodes, especially because they've basically been absent from the plot of this season, except for the whole Mechamaru thing from 15 episodes ago, but even then it was pretty much only Utahime, Mechamaru, and Miwa. If you're not obsessive like me, you might not even remember who they all are and what they can do. I'll go over them from the youngest to the oldest. The only first year at Kyoto was just introduced in this episode, Nita Arata. He's the younger brother of Akari, the assistant supervisor Nobata and Nanami protected from blonde shithead. I won't go into too much detail for him because I feel like I remember there being a bonus page for him at some point. I just don't remember after which chapter. His technique is Painkiller, which stops any existing wounds from hurting or getting worse, but stops short of really healing like a reverse curse technique could. Next, we move on to the second years. First, we have Mai, Maki's sister. She has more cursed energy than Maki due to lacking her heavenly restriction, but still doesn't have that much. She has a somewhat adversarial relationship with Maki, seeing Maki as having dragged her into being a sorcerer by choosing to be one instead of remaining at the bottom of the totem pole in their family with her. Her curse technique is construction, allowing her to form physical objects out of cursed energy. Due to her low amount of energy, she can only craft the equivalent of a single bullet per day. She uses a revolver as a weapon for this reason, allowing her to abuse her opponent's inevitable counting of her shots to construct an additional bullet in the chamber and catch them off guard. Next, we have Muta Kokichi, or Mekamaru. I don't think I have to say much about him at this point. Finally, there's Miwa. She became a sorcerer to make money since she comes from a poor family. We haven't seen her in action at all this season except for flashbacks, but she basically fights the same way as Kusakabe, with a katana as a cursed tool, and uses techniques like simple domain and bato sword drawing. Now we move on to the third-year students. First, we have Kamo Noritoshi. He's not to be confused with the old Kamo Noritoshi, whose unforgivably disgusting experiments led to the creation of the Cursed Womb death paintings like Choso and his siblings. This Kamo was actually named after him, since he was born as a dishonorable bastard child in the family, who only had a shot at becoming the head because he happened to inherit the coveted blood manipulation technique of the Kamo clan. He hopes to become the head so he can welcome his mother back into the family, as she is very important to him, and she pushed him to become a sorcerer and take his shot in the clan instead of being exiled with her. His fighting style is basically like Choso, but less experienced/refined and overall weaker, since he has to use his own blood as a source for his technique, meaning he usually enters battle with pre-prepared blood bags so as to avoid making himself anemic, whereas Choso can convert cursed energy directly into blood, and so can use his extensive energy reserves to enact wide-scale blood attacks Kamo could never pull off. Next, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Todo Aoi, who was trained by the special grade sorcerer Tsukumo Yuki, and is a hand-to-hand powerhouse. As you probably already remembered from watching this episode, his technique, Boogie Woogie, allows him to swap the places of any two things with enough cursed energy within a certain distance of himself. Ever since he met Yuji and learned they had similar taste in women during the Goodwill event, he's thought of Yuji as his brother and or best friend interchangeably, and did a lot to help train Yuji up as a taijutsu fighter, culminating in their fight with Hanami. Finally, we have Momo Nishimiya, the witch-looking blonde girl with the broomstick. Her technique allows her to control the broomstick and use it to fly around, so she's typically used for surveillance and coordination purposes, assuming a bird's-eye view of the action to direct and relay information to her teammates. She also has a wind scythe attack she can use with her broom, which is apparently powerful enough that she had to hold it back when she used it on Nobara during the Goodwill event so it wouldn't kill her. We don't really know much about her personality, other than that she's close with the other female students at the Kyoto school, and we also know that she's blonde because she's half American on her father's side, who is also a sorcerer, which is very rare. Lastly for this section, the faculty. The teacher for all these students is Utahime Iori, who at this point still has not had a technique reveal. Unless you're a manga reader. Since she was already featured this season, I'll just talk about how when she's working, she wears a distinctive Shrine Maiden, or Miko, outfit, composed of a white kosode, or white robe, with a scarlet hakama, or trouser skirt, which in her case is umanori styled, which makes it look more like a skirt than trousers, even though she wears modern brown boots. She also has a distinctive scar across her face, which we saw was not present back when she was a student in high school, though we do not have the story on how she acquired it, and to be honest at this point, we're probably never going to get it. The last person on the roster at Kyoto is the principal, Gaku Ganji, but he's not present and, tiny spoiler, won't be before the end of the season, so screw that guy. So that wraps up the Kyoto cast recap. Not really an analysis, to be honest, but I legitimately couldn't think of anything to really cover in this episode. I felt like it was all pretty straightforward as far as I could tell. Lastly, let's go over the bonus pages for these chapters in the manga. We get the next 3 parts of Akutami's conversation with T-san, who is educating him on the underlying mechanics he was talking about with Gojo's technique. Enjoy the quiet reading time. And that's my episode recap and story analysis for the 20th episode of the second season of Jujutsu Kaisen. YouTube has apparently started making the like button light up if the words thumbs up are used in the video, so let me know if it works and you see those pretty RGB lights under the video by giving it a click. I want to test and see if it happens for everybody or if it's like only for YouTubers who are big enough. Make sure to subscribe and turn on bell notifications if you want to be here as soon as possible each week as I put out new videos for each episode as it airs, and feel free to drop a comment with suggestions as to other videos you might like to see, such as character analysis videos or explanations. Thanks for watching.